Good morning. My name is Barbara Fuller. As Chair of the Board, I welcome you to this March 20th, 2023 working session of the Washtenaw County Board of Road Commissioners. Our office coordinator, Aaron Smith, will describe how our meetings operate, how to access the agenda packet, and how people may participate remotely. Aaron.
Thanks, Chair Fuller. There are multiple ways to make public comment during today's meeting, whether you're joining us in person or virtually. If you're here in person and would like to make public comment, please fill out the sign-in sheet now. If you're joining us virtually, we'll ask you to virtually raise your hand at the appropriate time in the agenda. If you're joining us virtually, the chat feature on the Zoom meeting is available only as technical support for users on their computer or smartphone. If you're experiencing technical issues with audio or video during the meeting, submit a comment in the chat feature and Tiffany Oliphant will help you troubleshoot. If you're a staff member experiencing issues, please contact the IT help desk for assistance. The audio and video of this meeting is being recorded. A link to the video recording will be posted to our website in the coming days. There are also printed copies of today's working session agenda on the table here and is also posted on our website. There's a link available in the chat if you're joining us from your computer or smartphone. And I'll turn it over to Chair Barb Fuller.
Thank you, Aaron. I now call this working session of March 20th, 2023 to order and ask Aaron to call the roll.
Chair Barb Fuller.
Present.
Vice Chair Rod Green.
Here.
Commissioner Gloria Yamas.
Here.
Commissioner Joanne McCollum.
Present.
And the following directors are in attendance. Managing Director Cheryl Siddle, Director of Engineering and County Highway Engineer Matt McDonald, Director of Operations Adam Lape, and Director of Finance and IT Dan Ackerman.
Very good. At this point in time, I will ask for public participation, and Aaron will tell us how that works.
Since this is a hybrid meeting with both in-person and virtual attendees, we will take turns between those attending in person and virtually. For virtual attendees, we ask that you virtually raise your hand now. If you're viewing the meeting on your computer, first make sure to click join audio. You can then raise your hand by clicking the participants or reactions button at the bottom of your screen and then the raise hand button. If you dialed into the meeting from your touch tone phone, raise your hand by dialing *9. I will unmute virtual participants with raised hands one at a time, and I will announce your username or last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. Please share your name and address before beginning your comments. For in-person attendees, we will start with those who have signed up on the sign-in sheet as you walked in. If you didn't sign in, you're still welcome to make comment. I'll notify you when it is your turn. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to share their comments with the board. At this time, it doesn't look like anyone would like to make public comment.
All right. I would just ask Commissioner Sanders, did you have any remarks that you wanted to offer during public comment in this working session? Seeing none.
No, ma'am. Madam Chair, I do not. Good morning.
All right, good morning. We will move along then. I will turn this over to our Managing Director, Cheryl Siddle, to kick us off. Cheryl.
All right. Well, I'm going to very quickly turn it over to Brent Schlack, who's our Assistant Director of Engineering and has a presentation for us on traffic and safety.
Good morning, Brent Schlack, Assistant Director of Engineering. Give me 1 second. Let me get all this hooked up. It worked this morning, so hopefully it works again. So while Tiffany's getting that work set up to display, thank you for allowing me to come present. We did this last year and we kind of went through the group, what traffic and safety is, who we are, and what we do. And so this is kind of a build on that. So we'll still go through kind of what we do, and I'll jump in on this in a second. Can everyone see the presentation? So our agenda today, we'll talk about kind of our core responsibilities within traffic and safety. Then we'll go dig a little deeper into our crash statistics for the county. And we'll kind of look at county as a whole, and then we'll look at what specifically for the roadways under our jurisdiction. Then we'll talk about what we've done and what more can we do. So what we do, so we maintain our traffic signs, signals, pavement markings, guardrail. We receive and respond to citizen requests. Just a few statistics with that. We have about 30,000 signs that we maintain. Of that, we have about 6,000 that are road name signs, and 3,600 of those are stop signs. We maintain 177 traffic devices, which 104 of those are traffic signals. And of those 104, 50 of them have a battery backup unit.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to run through that again because I don't see that in writing.
It is not. These are in my notes, and this is
Okay.
again, kind of a build. We
No,
presented
it's okay.
the,
I'm not being critical,
No.
Brent. So you started with 30,000 signs. What was
Correct.
the next one?
so of those 30,000 signs, about 6,000 of those are road name signs.
Road name signs.
And
Okay,
those are important because those are ones that we make within our sign shop.
okay,
And then another very important sign that we have part of our system are stop signs. And of that 30,000, we have 3,600 stop signs that we maintain. And those are important because those are an emergency call out for overtime.
okay.
Then we maintain 177 electronic traffic devices. Then I'll break that down a little bit further. So of that 177, we have 104 traffic signals, and those are just ones that are under our jurisdiction. We do maintain some for MDOT, but these are just for our jurisdiction. And of those 104, 50 of them have a battery backup. And then of the 177, we have 54 of those are flashing beacons, and 19 are rectangular rapid flashing beacon. We maintain 10.4 million feet of long line pavement marking.
Say that again, 10
Yeah.
point,
10.4 million feet of long line pavement marking. That's edge line, center line. 17,000 feet of stop bar. And 31,000 feet of crosswalk markings.
I'm going to ask you to give us that later. Okay.
That's fine.
Separately,
Yes,
so I don't
I can come back.
misstate.
Yeah.
All right, impressive.
And those are approximate. I mean, I didn't put the exact. number.
Sure,
Those are
sure, sure,
approximate.
sure. Commissioner Green?
Thank you. What is the criterion for when you use a backup and when you don't? Battery backup. for signal.
It's our standard now. So we try to put that in every cabinet. Those are just ones that we've touched, ones that we've modernized. And the main reason we use that, not just whenever the power goes out, but it's to protect our equipment. So as power comes into our cabinet, that power fluctuates through the day. And sometimes it can be, on the lower end of voltage, and we want to protect our equipment, so when that voltage starts to vary, it can damage our equipment. And so that battery backup unit really helps maintain that equipment, and because it's very expensive. I mean, to build a traffic signal, you're talking not just thousands, like tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars for an intersection. So we want to protect that equipment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCollum?
I want to ask about the batteries also. Were the batteries for the traffic signals?
Yes, so how we have those set up are we run the signal fully.
Hmm.
So, red, yellow, green. And so on a typical outage, it's normally minutes whenever we see an outage. And so then it will run that signal full, no one will see any difference. Now, whenever we had the most recent incident with where we had trees down, that power's out for a long period of time, those batteries can't maintain that long.
So I was just wondering it seems like you have half of the traffic signals have batteries and the other half don't.
Yeah, that's just where we're at today.
Okay,
Yeah,
So we're
that
working
that
on-
number will continue to grow.
okay.
As we modernize the equipment. and
Correct.
Have other opportunities for improvements.
Yep. So we also, we establish speed limits throughout the county. We do some traffic studies. And through those studies, we do traffic counts for our system. And we monitor crashes, which we'll kind of focus on here.
Question,
Yes.
you say set speed limits?
So we establish the speed limits on the county road system throughout the county within our jurisdiction.
So when is it that the state police takes
So-
over versus what we're doing?
Yeah.
That's a frequent question.
It
that
is a
we
very
receive.
frequent question. I appreciate you digging deeper on that. So it's actually a three-party process. So the road commission, and a lot of times it starts, maybe it probably starts with the resident requesting it, but the road commission goes out and we evaluate it. Then we have to involve the Michigan State Police and also the township. And so they all three have to agree on what that speed limit should be established to. Ultimately, a traffic control order will be processed through Lansing, through the Michigan State Police in order for that to be posted.
So the state police has the ultimate authority with respect to determining the speed limit.
We go out and we verify and we do checks on what the speed limit are. And then ultimately the Michigan State Police will come in and do the official speed study.
Okay.
So we also look at warrants for multi-way stops or for where traffic signals are warranted. We determine whether or not flashing beacons should be installed, curb warning signs. We look at advisory speeds for our curves, and that's through a system where we call ball bank. So where you have an elevation, super elevation through a curve, we determine what that speed should be through the curve. Those are advisory speeds. They're not regulatory speeds.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner McCollum.
Yeah, this looks like this list under the study looks familiar, like the speed bumps.
Yeah, it's very similar. In traffic and safety, we have our procedures and our processes that we go through to determine whether or not things are warranted. And traffic calming devices is just another arm of that. And so, yes, so we collect a lot of data to help us make decisions. So we also look to improve our current system. We look at projects that are funded through federal safety, through congestion mitigation, air quality grants, through our highway safety improvement grants, and then, like Commissioner McCollum said, our neighborhood traffic management program, which is our traffic calming program. And just a note on that, we have 158 speed humps on our system today. So now we'll kind of dig into, our crash statistics. But before we get into that, there's always this debate on crash versus accident. I know me growing up or in my professional career, there was probably a period of time that I called things accidents, but as you start to look at things, an accident just gives that implication that there's no one at fault, or that it just happened, the circumstances happened to cause the crash, where the term crash really puts ownership of that there may have been some issue with the driver or with the vehicle itself. And so whenever we, specifically in traffic and safety, when we refer to a collision, we refer to it as a collision or a crash, not an accident. And that kind of leads into, so a majority of our fatal crashes, and this has been documented through AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. 93% of those
Just
fatal crashes.
hold on a minute. Our packet, keep going, keep going. It's a little deeper in the packet.
Yeah, so I apologize. I did make some adjustments. As
How'd
I
you do
was,
that?
as I was practicing for this, I felt this fit better here.
Okay, We're with you
Sorry.
now.
I
found it.
meant to say that earlier. I told
Sorry.
Carol and I forgot.
Okay.
I forgot to.
Sorry. So yeah, so this is a few slides deeper in.
Okay,
So as you start to look at and break down fatal crashes, based on AASHTO and other sources, 93% of those crashes are due to some human error, risky behavior, impairment, distracted driving, failure or improper use of restraint, other risky behaviors as far as red light running or failure to yield, drowsy driving. When you break down why we're having a lot of issues, a lot of those are due to that human factor.
I'm sorry.
Questions? Yeah.
Looks like we have lots of questions.
Great.
Commissioner Yamas and then Commissioner Green. And if
So-
you think of something, you're next.
So I see that you have vehicle failure 13%. So when you talk about vehicle failure, then that is not an accident. That is still the responsibility of the
Crash.
driver, a crash.
Correct.
Okay, and then the road factors 34%. Also crash or accident.
That would still be a crash. I mean, those are correctable incidents that, you know, either we can do as an agency or as the maintaining.
Okay.
You can still correct that.
Okay, so when you use these stats, when we're talking about the technicians on the road, is it considered a crash for them? Or when discipline is coming around, how do you determine that?
I would still classify it as a crash. I mean, there could have been something that driver or could have done to, or, you know, in most cases, the driver, but could have been other, you know, factors, the roadway or the vehicle itself. So yeah, I would still classify that as a crash.
Okay. So I'm just thinking of everybody's ordered out, like we're all ordered out. And, you know, I've had it happen to me, even on the road, you don't even have to be moving and your vehicle is going to move. So how does that end up being the fault of the driver?
You know, to get into specifics of a detailed crash, we would still code that as a crash, you know, not the accident. I mean, it's, you know, and not knowing the, you know, the details of what all those incidents are, would be hard for
Well,
me
they're
to
right. So they're really
justify
rare.
whether it's an
Right.
accident.
So they're really rare, but we've been like in ice storms and you still have to go out, right? You have no
Correct.
control of what the road is.
Yeah,
And you're ordered to go somewhere. Even if you've stopped before you see black ice or where you think is black ice. It just, and the 13% and the 34% does not equal the 93%. So it's like some overlap is happening.
Yep, see the Venn diagram with the circles that overlap?
Yeah,
yeah,
that's where I was saying, yeah,
right. Yeah,
creates
yeah.
that overlap.
Right,
I-
fundamentally, what we're getting at with the terminology
Uh-huh.
and using crashes is that ultimately something normally could have been done differently that would have prevented that from happening.
Right.
Now, maybe it's way back at, you know, I mean, the way the vehicle was manufactured. I mean, it could be that far back. We're not always looking to point like a true finger, but something could have been done differently that would have prevented that. And that's where collectively, whether it is in the manufacturing side of the vehicle side of it, whether it is in the roadway design, on how we, you know, it was either designed, built, or ultimately maintained, or really most of it is how we as drivers are behaving. Could
Right.
we have done something different?
Right.
Again, not trying to point fingers at people as much as just trying to say, we're all in this together, safety, especially, you know, it's involving motor vehicles. And is there something else that we could have been done? And especially when you look at something like the driver piece of it, you could have been impaired, but was there a roadway factor? Was there also then a tree that was right there that, you know, so sometimes there is that, like the Venn diagram where it's both. So that's
Right.
why your statistics don't add up. I mean, they're more than 100% because it
Right.
could have involved more than one.
Right. Well, and that makes sense, right? That it'll be a little bit of all of them or all three or just two.
Right.
Commissioner Green.
Yes. My question was about the roadway factors, but I think you've answered it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything?
All right.
Commissioner McCollum.
I
I
do.
knew I could count on you.
So I'm just wondering, how does this information help the road commission to know that the majority of these crashes are human?
Yeah, I'll dig a little deeper as we go on to the presentation and some of the things that we've done and some of the things that we can do to help with that. So yeah,
Thanks, Brett.
so hold on to that question.
Okay.
And if he doesn't answer it, circle
Yeah,
back
that's
and get
right.
him.
Please do. So we'll watch a little
Oh, now
video
we're backing
here.
up again. Is this a test?
Oh, it should, I only moved one,
All right.
hopefully. Okay. So it should be back in order now.
Yep.
$10,000.
I think it's like 5,000, 25,000.
Yeah, a lot.
2,000 plus, at least over 100,000. That would definitely give it in the thousands. 5,000 a year.
Okay. Ooh, wow. Ooh.
Half that,
I'm thinking like 2,500.
maybe 4,000.
Around like 3,000.
30,000 maybe, at least 15 to 17.
25,000 maybe?
Easily a couple hundred.
50, but that's 50,000, but that sounds like a
Okay.
lot.
Maybe 1,000.
Distracted driving,
Probably alcohol.
Texting,
not paying attention to what you're actually doing.
drunk driving, texting. They are distracted because their telephone ring.
Or maintenance on your vehicles.
Texting while driving. People driving and not paying attention. Drinking. Speeding. Distracted driving. Tiredness behind the wheel. Eating or just not paying attention.
Bad road conditions.
Talking on the phone.
No, because you have the human factor.
No.
No, unless we all start walking.
Right. Not at all.
No.
I don't think that's possible.
No, unfortunately. I don't think so. Just mainly because humans make mistakes. $50 would be my lowest.
I would like to see it at like 100.
We need to keep it under 200 if at all possible. 150.
Maybe 100. Zero.
None.
Yeah, none.
None. Should there be none?
Zero. Absolutely zero. Well, it'd be nice to say zero. Zero.
Zero would be awesome.
Overall goal should obviously be zero.
Zero would be idealistic.
It should be zero for everyone.
Zero.
Zero. That should be the goal.
None.
Yeah, none.
So that's a campaign that MDOT did for the Towards Zero Deaths. And as you can see, as you break it down, it really starts to hit home, right? So, well, how many should we have? And so as you look at, and I call this the safe system approach, and I'll kind of go into details on that, but there's a lot of these different campaigns. You have the Road to Zero, Towards Zero Deaths, Vision Zero, and they all kind of say the same thing. And what it looks at is it looks at a safe system approach. So safer people, safer roads, safer vehicles, safer speeds, and then post-crash care. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about those. So safer people, again, being responsible, understanding your vehicle, kind of being a little more responsible for your for your own self whenever you put yourself in a vehicle. Safer roads, so we can design and maintain our roads in the environments to mitigate those human mistakes. Understand that there is some injury tolerance, encourage safe behaviors so we can be an advocate for those. Facilitates safe travel for the most vulnerable users, which are pedestrians and bicyclists. And then safer vehicles, which again, that's the rule, vehicle manufacturers trying to make those safer with airbags and all the other features you have, eventually, hopefully getting to connected vehicles and autonomous vehicles. Safer speeds, looking at those speeds to make sure that they account for all the factors of a roadway. And then post-crash care. This one, and I'll kind of go into a little bit more detail on this one because Elena Yadakina and I, so Elena's in the audience as well. She is my counterpart whenever we're looking at a lot of our system and trying to evaluate it. We sit on a task force with SEMCOG. That's the Roadway Safety Task Force. And we were going through this safety system approach. The item that we got to kind of talk about more during our last meeting was post-crash care. What we see a lot of times on roadways is whenever there's a crash or an incident, then vehicles follow that same crash pattern and we have multiple crashes in the same area. And where that gets really dangerous is whenever we have people responding, we're trying to clean up that or trying to help manage that crash. Then what we want to do is eliminate that. We want fast response times as fast as possible, and then trying to set those roadways up so that those additional crashes, that follow-up crash is not happening. So what this is kind of led into is we have to, as a region, we have to adopt safety targets. And so SEMCOG has looked at multiple approaches. And I know Barb may have, Commissioner Fuller has been part of our Watts Policy Committee, and they've talked about these. And in some cases, we've really had a hard time because the statistics and everything will show that our crashes may be going up. So we really pushed hard to have some type of approach that would show that we want to drive these crashes down. And so what they developed was this non-linear curve that looks at trying to reduce crashes over time. So that's what you see in front of this is for fatal crashes. And the goal is by 2050 to have 0 fatalities. And that's going to be, again, through that safety system approach where everybody is kind of, whether it's the vehicle manufacturer, us as a road agency, the person themselves, and then driving towards that, hopefully that autonomous vehicle that we can all get into and then be able to make it to work or wherever our events, safely and not have any incident. So that's
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm
Commissioner
sorry.
Green?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just wondering, does the Road Commission get involved in crash cleanup?
I think, and that would be more of a question for our Director of Operations, Adam Late, but I believe we do help with some of the traffic control for those and trying to help manage the roadway itself, but Adam can probably.
Yeah, good morning. Adam Lape, Director of Operations. Yeah, exactly what Brent said. We usually maintain the traffic, so maintenance of traffic, we'll focus on that. There are times where sometimes we have to apply some material and aid like stopping runoff. So if a vehicle punctures a radiator or punctures a fuel tank or something, we try to contain that until the professionals can get there and actually remove that contaminated debris. But the rest is required by the towing company to remove the actual debris from the cars, the crash vehicle. They have to take that with them. So most times we just maintain the traffic and and let the towing companies and first responders kind of manage theirs.
And does that pose any risk for our workers? I'm just wondering, safety is always on my mind.
Yeah, that's why we focus mainly on the maintaining the traffic, because we're not trained in the towing. So we don't really know how to, we're not trained in maintaining the vehicle or understanding, do you unhook the battery or how to maintain a damaged vehicle. So we kind of try to stay away from that as best we can. We just secure the area.
So are you thinking who gets the push broom out there? Who drags the bumper out of the road? Who gets the deer off?
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we do for sure. We do move the deer off the road and if we need to help sweep up, we'll sweep up quickly. But most of the time, that's the towing company's responsibility.
That
Yeah,
any
that-
time that we're out there, that's exposure for our people if we're
Mm-hmm.
setting up the traffic control associated with it. And it's normally semi-chaotic motorists, it's unexpected, so they're not necessarily behaving appropriately. So certainly anytime we're out there, it's putting our own folks at risk, or at
Yeah.
least exposure.
Yeah, that's correct. That's why we focus on what, we're trained to do, which is kind of secure the area where we're kind of in our vehicles, what we know how familiar with. So,
So who protects our workers while we're out there? The police? I mean, do they?
yeah, law enforcement, first responders, their lights sometimes are listened to or responded to a little bit different than our amber lights. But at the end of the day, we try to look out for everybody out there. So
Right.
if the first responders there before us, we try to look out for them. If we're there, we happen upon the accident, they try to take care of us when we're there. So crashes are a little bit hectic at times, but yeah.
Yeah, but we
Try
have
to watch out
appropriate
for them.
PPE and our folks know where to place their vehicles and those types of things to minimize any of the risk associated with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All set. Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.
This is the similar curve for serious injuries. So we classify serious injury as one's we call it an A crash. That's where it's life altering type crash. And so we focus on those whenever we're looking at a lot of our grant applications for those fatal and serious injury type crashes.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Yamas.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So back to your curves, and I see that the seriousness of injuries has gone way down, and I wonder the definition of crash, its correlation with your first regional safety targets. The crashes and the definition, if they started changing around the time that it looks like it's going up a little bit, but it's still down from the original 600, or what is that? 6,000.
Yeah, and to touch on, you're talking like in the late 90s. I mean, so we had a lot of advancement with our vehicles. So we had airbags, more high seatbelt usage, ABS brakes. So there were a lot of factors, and then roadway officials themselves, looking at our roadside environment, looking at shoulder widths. So there were a lot of, it was a collective effort, I guess, and you can see it just drove down a lot of those crashes. And so we've kind of plateaued a little bit. And so again, now we're charged with trying to further drive that number down.
So I see that the injuries have down, but I was referring to the regional safety targets. And where it's, obviously the injury's gone down, and that makes sense. All the new safety equipment that's come out, but it started to go down and then it started to go back up a little bit. And I was wondering if there was a correlation to the definition of crashes, because I've seen in the industry what used to be excused no longer was excused because of the human error. They started looking at real human error, that it wasn't an accident. It really was a crash. We're paying attention. The other thing is the advent of technology, right?
Yeah,
More
right.
and more having to carry computers in your vehicles for work or the cell phone. The correlation between it going up, but certainly is not the same as, that's where I was making reference to in, what is that, 1995? No, that's the wrong graph.
So what's your question, Gloria? You lost
Question
me.
was the correlation between The
Fatalities
definition,
and serious injuries?
no, the relationship of how we started defining crashes to this graph in 95, but it makes sense that it would. The safety targeting makes sense to me. I was just thinking about the other graph that you have where it looks like crashes were going up.
So
Do you say in the previous, one more back? Yeah, so I was talking about, not that one, this one, yes.
those are fatalities.
These are
Yeah,
fatalities.
those are fatality crashes.
Okay,
correct.
I see.
And the numbers on the left are not the same in this graph as they are in the
Right.
next one, which is kind of
Yeah.
deceiving.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking is trying to,
Yeah, we'll dive deeper into the issues that we're seeing on our roadway system.
okay,
But, every agency or roadway system, it depends on what your environment is like, right? Like if we were a city, we would probably have a different issue or a different statistic that we're looking at and trying to help improve.
yeah,
Than what we are as a county agency. Even county agency or county road commission through Michigan may be looking at something a little bit different. So we'll dive a little deeper into our numbers as I go a little bit further.
okay,
Yeah, so these are just serious injuries and it follows again that nonlinear approach. These are the crash statistics for our county as a whole. So these are all the cities and villages and even the freeway system. So these are the crash types. So whenever you look at a crash report, which is called a UD-10, they are, the type of crash is coded out in these 6 crash types, whether it's a single motor vehicle, head-on crash, angle or head-on left turn, rear end, side swipe, or other. And as you can see, we have over 30% are single motor vehicle, and we'll dive a little deeper into those coming up into when we look at our statistics. Angle or head-on crashes, a lot of times that would be an intersection or driveway. And rear ends typically happen in an intersection. So looking at our data, so we're right around, and I know this is a busy slide and I apologize. But we're right around 3,500 crashes per year, just on our county. These are just the roadways under our jurisdiction. So we have a tool through the state of Michigan where we can just boil this down to what is just under our jurisdiction. The fatal crashes over the past 5 years, are anywhere from 15 to 20 crashes, fatal crashes. You can see our serious injuries. And then we break this down into lane departure, and that gets into that single motor vehicle where they're leaving the roadway and hitting some fixed object. Then intersection, then I did our most vulnerable users, pedestrian, bike, and then animal, because we do have some rural areas that, and you can see we do have quite a few crashes that involve some type of animal.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner McCollum.
Yes, the intersection data, it looks good as far as where it's going. From, if you graphed it, it's going down. Is
Mhm.
that because there's been more improvement on the intersections that we?
Yeah, I mean, we focus a lot on our intersections. Well, we evaluate those, determine what the best fix is for that intersection. Whether it's a multi-way stop or a traffic signal or a roundabout, we really look at that intersection to determine what the best fix is. And then it all depends on our funding availability.
I'm wondering, is it because we have more roundabouts,
Yeah, it could be.
that we have less crashes?
Yeah, it's a good trend that we have in the county.
Commissioner Green.
Yes, the increase from crashes from last year, what are your thoughts on what might be responsible for that?
Well, you're leading right into my next slides.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay, sure, thank you.
Yeah, so.
Way to go, Rod.
Yep. So as we boil that down, so we look at our serious injury crashes. So these are just the percentage of serious injuries. And as you can see, we're right around 50% of our serious injury crashes are due to lane departure. And right around 30% of those are drugs and alcohol. And so as I look at those crash statistics and I start to look at those injury rates, then I'll just flip to the next one because this one's even more pronounced. So of our fatal crashes, when you look at the percentage of fatal crashes, again, we're above 50% are due to a lane departure, and even higher percentage, 60 to 80% are due to drugs and alcohol. So us as a road agency, when we're looking at this data and we're looking at what we can do, of course, we have a social issue. We live in a college type town. And so we, obviously we take a correlation between, either people are drinking and driving and then they're leaving the roadway, they're hitting some fixed object, and that's causing our fatal crashes.
Commissioner Green.
So the lane departure, I'm assuming that includes some form of distracted driving.
It could be, yes.
No separate category for that.
Yeah, so it could be distracted driving, could be drowsy driving. Again, we have a huge medical area. So, they've correlated that somebody that is deprived of sleep to be similar to those that are on, that are driving impaired. So or it could be distracted, could be overcorrection, they leave the roadway and they overcorrect and then they end up leaving the roadway on the other side of the road. So there's a lot of variables in whenever you look at that lane departure crash.
One more question.
Commissioner Green.
That's okay. With the advent of texting, et cetera, while people are driving, is there anyone collecting data on the impact of distracted driving?
It's hard
I
because
know.
you're relying on a lot of that information from that officer coding out that crash report, that UD-10. So I think to even that enforcement agency, it's hard for them to dig that deep into an investigation to determine, was it distracted driving? I think that we all know that, yes, that's part of it, but we're looking at a report that, it's as good as that officer that's filling it out.
I see. Thank you.
So now we'll go into what we've done. So one area that we've looked at, MDOT puts on this program, and it's called the Local Safety Initiative, LSI. And so this process involves MDOT. So it's kind of a third party. They go and they review our crash history over a period of time. I think it's 3 or 5 years. They identify locations of concern. They identify what those countermeasures should be for those areas. And then we perform field visits. Then they develop a report. It's one that we can use. Yep, you're fine. It's one that we can use to then help us when we apply for future funding. And so it's a good program. It's a one that, again, it's kind of like a third party reviewing our system to help us look at those locations where we should be focusing on, either through our grant applications or through our just maintenance practices. We've applied for grants. So over the past 5 years, we've brought in more than $20 million of grant projects to Washtenaw County. Our highway safety improvement program, we brought in 3.7. our highest rural roads running over $3 million. And then our congestion mitigation air quality program, we brought in $13.2 million. And I'm certainly happy to break this down any further after the meeting on what we've actually applied for and what we received. And then quickly we just learned last week, the federal government has a new program that they've developed through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And it's the carbon reduction program. We were awarded 4 projects, part of that program. One was at Parker and Shield, that's to install a traffic signal. The mast at Hirner Drive and Joy intersection to put a roundabout. Whitaker and Martz, we were awarded $1.2 million for a roundabout there, and then Pontiac Trail and Dixboro were awarded $1.2 million for those fiscal years. So we'll be ramping up to start working on these projects.
Hi, Matt McDonnell, Director of Engineering. I just wanted to point out that without our great staff of Brent and Elaine and others that work on this, we would not be bringing these competitive dollars into Washtenaw County. That this is remarkable because out of this particular grant funding, there was only 9 million available for Macomb, Oakland, Wayne, and Washtenaw. And we brought back, they brought back over $3 million. So this is an amazing feat. They are excellent at what they do. They do a great job of putting these grants together, particularly Elena. She is become an expert in this field of both the carbon reduction, which is a new one. And then it's very similar to the congestion mitigation air quality grant program, which again, if we talk about those 50 signals with battery backup, that's from CMAQ. And that's how we're able to improve our system. And they are doing a great job. I just want to applaud their efforts. So
It also point out that these funds are in addition to what we actually need to, there's sometimes a match, right?
yes, some programs, CMAQ, generally speaking, is 100% for construction. But we still have soft costs to put together the projects and to oversee and administer, do the engineering. Those are our costs that we take on as an agency. So yes, there are matching funds, but overall, some of these intersections, particular Mass Road, Hirner Drive and Joy Road, have been talked about for as long as I've worked here at the Road Commission. And to finally bring it back and to get some funding for that project that's been much talked about is just very exciting. So, but there will be match. For instance, for these roundabout projects, we will have to acquire real estate. There will be some acquisition that we'll need to do, and that cost is something that our agency will bear as a local match. So those are the kind of things. But I just want to point out this is just a very important funding sources that we can tap into that address this overall topic of safety. So I wanted to toot their horns because I know Brent won't do that as well.
Well, and is it safe to say these projects probably wouldn't happen without this
Agreed.
external
I mean,
funding?
yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. Yes. Thank you.
And if people aren't aware, Elena, would you stand up, please? Brent, will you introduce
Yeah, please.
Elena?
Come introduce yourself, Elena.
Elena Yerikina, working under Brent for a number of years, and very excited to improve safety in our county. And we always look for opportunities to improve. Like if there's any new funding or any grant, I'm like, let's try to see what it's about and apply and find good match, good locations for specific funding. So it's very exciting that this effort paid off. Not every effort pays off.
No, right.
So, but
But $20 million worth of effort paid off, right?
Yeah.
Well done. Well done. Nice to see you, Elena.
Thank you. Yeah, Elena is just vital to our traffic and safety department. And she's great to brainstorm and just explore ideas on how to improve our system. And this just drives, those numbers that Commissioner McCollum brought up on our intersection numbers going down. This is just another avenue on what we're doing to try and help with those. We also are looking at connected vehicles. So we have a pilot project that we're looking on State Road. Those intersections are State at Textile, State at Morgan, State at Campus Parkway. That we're looking to improve those Textile and Platt. So those 4 intersections, we're doing a pilot project that we'll be able to send messages to all connected vehicles, or if a driver chooses, they can have an app that will display on their heads-up display within their vehicle. And I'll show you an example of that. So we can send out traveler information messages, and we can display our signal phase and timing of our traffic signals to the drivers.
Commissioner Yamas?
Could you repeat those 4 intersections? again?
Sure, State and Textile. Actually, I'll go from north to south. So State and Morgan, State and Textile, State and Campus Parkway, and then Platt and Textile.
Thank you.
Commissioner Green?
I'd like to ask an obvious question. What does CMAQ stand for?
Congestion mitigation air quality.
Okay, thank you. And that's where the state money is coming from for.
Yeah, those are federal dollars that the state administers. And it's based on air quality. We have to look at carbon reduction and nitrous oxide reduction, how that, how our projects will look to improve those numbers.
Thank you.
So this is just an example of some of the traveler information. So this would either be on a vehicle that has the connected vehicle technology, or if a driver chooses to have the application, it'll display on their heads-up display within their vehicle. And then I'll give you an example.
I hope somebody's tracking the innovations of these displays with distracted driving.
Yeah. Well, and that's where hopefully a lot of these are hands-free, and they're just providing information to the driver. But as you can see, so this would be kind of our module on the right. And the message that we put in there is winter storm, icy roads, be careful. And then I'll play a video. So this is a vehicle driving. You can see their heads-up display. Snowplow. And then it pops up with the display. So we would have the ability to push this out through our traffic signals and through the application to warn people of our construction projects coming up, of weather events or closures. So again, it's a pilot project that we're looking to understand a little bit better.
Commissioner Yamas?
So does it speak, because I use Google Maps all the time, or just Maps off of iPhone, that instead of looking at the map, I am listening to the cues like.
That's a very good question, and I will verify that, but I would assume that if your phone is set up in that manner, it would. But yeah, that's a good question. I'll make sure that that's part of it.
Oh, great, thanks.
And do you know what year these little display screens became standard equipment?
I don't know. Probably,
I was
I
just
don't
curious
know.
because I don't have a display panel on my vehicle. It's old enough that it doesn't, and I'm just curious when that kicked in.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of third-party devices you can put in a vehicle. I'm not sure what year those.
Okay, sorry, just a distracted question.
Then also, we can look at signal phase and timing. So this would be, again, either through the app or through that heads-up display. It'll be able to provide a real-time countdown of our intersections. And of course, there'd be some factors of safety. We don't want those trying to beat the signal. So, but again, it's to be additional information to try and help those drivers navigate through our intersections.
Oh, that's interesting.
So then we look at, well, what more can we do? There's always room for improvement and room to enhance what we're doing with our system. You know, and it's, again, it's all those questions that we've heard through this presentation on how do we solve all these issues on speeding, distracted driving, motorcycles, seatbelt usage. And really it's, you know, it's the roadway safety is everyone's responsibility. You've probably heard in the past the 3 E's. 3 E's are engineering, enforcement, and education. We really drive those here at the road commission. You know, everybody plays a role, including the driver, that in order to make our roadway system safer, takes everyone to put in. And that then lends itself to that safety system approach.
Commissioner Green.
There's an argument that the increased use of automated vehicles will help bring crashes and fatalities down to 0. What are your thoughts on that?
I believe that the technology will get there. It'll take some time, but I do believe our system will get there, and we will have a day where the vehicle is driving itself. Again, when that comes, it will be a long time. When you look at like ABS brakes, it took 30 years to put in place. Even seatbelt usage, right, that took a long time to really get to drive home and to drive those numbers up to convince those to wear them. So autonomous vehicles are going to follow that same process, and so it'll take a long time, but I do believe our system will get there. And one way is to be open to improvements like we have through connected vehicles and looking to maintain our system. You know, again, my staff is very aware of some of these improvements and for the vehicle itself, and we've started to paint our roadways a little bit different. We've made that edge line a little bit wider. We've kind of dashed our edge line through intersections. And so it takes all of that to get to that point. So yeah, I do believe we will be there, but it's going to be a while.
Commissioner Yamas, I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yes, I just say thank you.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Yamas, do you have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned 3 E's, education, engineering, and
Enforcement.
enforcement. And I had wrote myself a note about education, and some time ago, I haven't sent PSAs on television or on the radio in a long time, but education seems to me that would be huge, right?
Yeah.
Defensive driving classes, or I'm amazed at the number that people don't even know the rules of the road, you know?
Yeah, I always use the example. So I'm a hockey coach, and the education that I have to go through on a yearly basis to continue to play hockey, and our drivers don't have to perform any type of education on a yearly basis, or even, you know, whenever they register their vehicle on a, you know, a routine basis, that it's mind-boggling. You know, I do believe, I agree, we are missing the boat here on trying to educate our drivers and continuing to make sure our system it changes. And those, I mean, we have drivers from, you know, 15-year-olds to, you know, 80, 90-year-olds. So those 15-year-olds probably know what our system is a little bit better than those that are older. And so to not have that education piece to it it's really discouraging to me.
It is. It seems like a defensive driving. So our drivers, right? I know that utility drivers, ATT, they have to go to defensive driving classes every year that teach the rules of the road, defensive driving, all of those things. But
yeah,
and that's just I want to thank you for that presentation.
Great presentation.
It's excellent.
So the other aspect that we could look at, centerline rumbles. We've started to put these in place in certain areas through some of our safety grants. But we do have our countywide paving when we actually do have this item within our countywide paving. And so we could work, us as a road commission to audit and determine where these are needed and look to install them and enhance our signage, especially through curves. Those are areas that we can continue to improve. Again, my staff is very good at what they do. And we look for these areas, but we could probably do a little bit better job as our projects come to life and as we start to plan our projects.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner McCollum.
the rumble strips, or where really the markings, the cars that are programmed to read the marking and not go over the line, are those the white ones or the yellow ones?
I believe they're both
Both?
lines.
Would that interfere with reading that with the rumble thing in there?
Actually, no, it doesn't. Actually, in my opinion, it improves it.
Okay,
So it provides a different angle on that marking to the driver or to the vehicle. Because we normally come in and mill out those rumble strips and then we paint it afterwards. And so if you can envision a milled out surface and the surface area of that, it would change that marking and in my opinion, improve it.
thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Green.
Just one question. How often are road commission vehicles involved in an accident or crash?
I
Just
did
kinda
not
curious
pull
about
that
that.
statistic. I'm sure we could get it, but I don't know. I would have to dig through the data and work with HR determine, but yeah, we could get that number too.
Do you have a question? No. Okay. Brent, when do the reflectors get embedded in these milled out areas?
So that's a different treatment. That's the raised pavement marking and that's the reflector. Sometimes you can mill those in. We had programs around here in previous years where we tried to implement those, and it's a really hard device to last. So with how we perform winter maintenance,
Yep.
Those devices struggle to stay in place. And there's a lot of northern states that don't use those for that reason. So we have an underbody plow and that plow is putting pressure on that road and it just doesn't work well with those reflective in the pavement.
Commissioner Yamas?
So I have a question. You're talking about devices specifically, but is there not illuminating or reflective paint?
There is, so all our paint is reflective. So and we can vary that reflectiveness based on the technology that and those are through glass beads.
Oh,
So whenever they paint the road, they drop glass beads on top of that line and that provides the reflectiveness of the marking.
is that something that also gets eroded away with the maintenance?
It does, yeah, and that's why we have a routine pavement marking program every year. And we have a budget for it to re-stripe our roads.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Other area we look at is lane departure crashes. So roadside obstruction removal. Those roadside obstructions can be head walls. In most cases for us, it's trees, edge drop, or slope improvements. Then I'll kind of go into a little bit more detail on what it means as far as, so we always refer to a term called clear zone. So as you see through this, that's the area that we would like to see no fixed objects for that vehicle to return back to the roadway or come to a safe stop. So we have the traveled portion of the roadway, at center line. Then we have that clear zone. That clear zone varies based on the volume of road and the speed of the road. And as you can imagine, the faster the speed, the wider that clear zone should be. So then we look at, well, why do we want obstruction removal? Because again, it helps clear that clear zone where that vehicle can come to a safe stop or return to the roadway. We've had fallen trees within the roadway. And then it, it looks at that safety system approach where we're doing what we can to try and help design and maintain our roadways to mitigate some of those driver errors or to help mitigate those fatal or serious crashes. So as we stated earlier, or I did, the 50%, greater than 50% of our crashes are lane departure crashes. And they're leaving the roadway and they're hitting some fixed object. In most cases for us, it's a tree. And so the better we can do with that, our grant funding can certainly help with that. But it's an area that we really need to start to look at further.
Matt, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Sure.
Yeah, Matt McNeil, Director of Engineering. So one of the things that we talk about is this safe system approach. We know drugs and alcohol for fatalities are over 50, closer to 75% of those incidents. And we also know that lane departure is a big problem in our county on our system that involves serious injury and fatalities. We also know most recently we talked about, and there was articles about how the cannabis tax that Washtenaw County was the highest in the state for securing money on the cannabis tax. So that means more drugs and alcohol in our county, correct? I mean, we've got to understand the social issues that are going on, and our road network, if we're truly going for a safer system of approach, we know we're going to have drivers out there under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And how can we provide them an opportunity or a space to make an error, correct it, and get back on the road? So that's part of the clear zone. I guess if you can go back to that slide with the clear zone. That clear zone area is so important because if you make a mistake, it doesn't cost you your life.
Mm-hmm.
You may end up in the ditch, or you may be able to traverse back onto the road and correct itself. And that's really where Brent and I and Elena have been trying to brainstorm, because that's another social issue. Because if we are wanting to go there and start addressing some clear zone, we all know what that means. That means tree removal. And that tree removal, we've got to have a very good reasoning and basis and message it so that it's appropriate that we are ready for that response. So these are things that we're not ready to do right now, but we want to start that conversation with you. We want to start that dialogue because we truly feel like we can do something as an agency to improve the situation with lane departures and serious injury and fatality. But it will be a big step. And there are dollars out there that we can go after, and we have in the past gone after obstruction removal and to establish better clear zones on targeted routes that we have crash history. I almost said it. So it's hard for me too. So we have crash history, and we can demonstrate based on that history. If we target this corridor, we can make some headway. So this is a very important topic. It's one that certainly we're passionate about. We take the towards zero deaths seriously. And I think there is a path to that. And what the question we have to ask ourselves is, what can this agency do to start driving those numbers down? We can't change the social things and and what people choose to do and get behind the wheel. But what can we do to provide a buffer, to provide a safe area for recovery, to provide, oh, if somebody made a mistake and it doesn't cost them their life. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Commissioner Green?
And I'm assuming that if you talk about expanding the clear zone and also the removal of trees, and now you're also asking for townships to get involved to comply with that request, right?
Well, ultimately, it's our road right of way. And
Okay.
so it's for us to manage. But absolutely, we need township support. They need to understand what we're doing as a road agency and what, you know, actually, this would be a great presentation for a township board as well. Parts, not maybe all of it, but
Right.
yeah, I think that would be very important. If we were to go after grant money ahead, I think we would want to make sure that everyone's aware of this opportunity and that we're actually applying for it and then laying the foundation of messaging and making sure the township, not only this board is supportive, but that township board is supportive as well. I think that's an important point, Commissioner Green.
Commissioner Yamas?
So my thought was part of this particular one about clear roads and driving the zero might also be a great presentation for the Washtenaw board, given the problems, and I don't want to say problems, the trouble solving that we had to come up with for the environmentalists who feel like no tree should be cut down, and an education process that would get the support that we need from the Washtenaw County commissioners.
Yeah.
From townships, but it's a better understanding, you know, and I just remember some of the arguments that people had, like, too bad for the people, you know, they should be more aware, but that's an excellent.
Yeah, and I think this board and our agency learned a great deal from those events that took place. We developed a public engagement policy.
Yes.
We actually developed a tree policy. So
Yeah.
I think we've got much better foundation. Not that we didn't have good reason for what we were doing. It's just now we've got the policy. And again, I think that's a great idea, Commissioner Yamas, that engaging the county commission would be very wise.
Yeah, so maybe an education process added on to, you know, you guys worked really hard putting together that policy. We worked hard to try and come up with a policy that will satisfy all people, but.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
So my last slide, again, it's working together to address the crash problem. You know, we don't want that person to say, hey, that's not my job. And so we want to all work collectively. We work with all of our law enforcement throughout the county. We throw ideas off of them. We get what their experience is so that it'll help us as we try to make some improvement.
And I will say also, our staff is dedicated to this because one of the things that traffic and safety does, it responds and helps to investigate these fatalities.
Yeah.
So it's heart-wrenching at times to come on these scenes or to take pictures of the vehicles afterwards and know that there's something that we could do as an agency to avoid this. So, yep.
Any other questions for Brent or Matt?
Well, thank you again.
Thanks, Brent.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Brent. Excellent
Your
presentation.
computer made it through without.
It
him,
did,
so
thank
good
you.
shape.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break and then come back, if that's all right with all of you. And then we'll have an update, a refresher on CPR and AED use here. So take a quick break. We'll come back at 10:30. I'll wait to hear from our control tower. We're ready? Okay, thank you, Tiffany.
Okay.
To
well,
you.
Good morning. For those of you who don't know, I'm Craig Timmer, your safety coordinator here at the Road Commission. We're going to talk a little bit about cardiac arrest and hands-only CPR this morning and do maybe a little refresher on the compressions only or hands-only CPR. Cardiac arrest is an electrical malfunction of the heart. It sends the heart into kind of a quivering state where it's not beating efficiently. Think of cardiac arrest as sort of an electrical problem, whereas a heart attack would be a plumbing problem where the pipes and arteries and veins are clogged and are not allowing blood flow, where cardiac arrest is electrical. Every year, there are about 350,000 out of hospital cardiac events involving those electrical problems. About 70% of those happen in the home. So it could be somebody that you know, somebody you love, somebody you're caring for. There's a good chance that it's going to be one of those people. And of those 350,000, only about 40% receive the immediate care, being CPR or interaction with an AED that they need to save the life. So what we're going to do today is teach you a great skill, and it's kind of exciting to learn not only how to use an AED, but how to use immediate hands-only CPR as well. So I'll play a little video for you. My computer went to sleep, but we'll wake it up. And I'll go ahead and play the video. And this will teach you that hands-only CPR.
A teen or adult suddenly collapse, it is important to act fast. Helping to save a life is easier than you might think. Just start hands-only CPR. The first step is to ask someone to call 911 and to get an AED, or call 911 yourself and put your phone on speaker mode so the operator can assist you. Then get directly over the victim. Put the heel of one hand in the center of the chest and put your other hand on top of the first. Then push hard and fast in the center of the chest until help arrives. It's important to push, giving 100 to 120 compressions per minute, which is about the same tempo as the song Staying Alive, or the rate of music you're listening to right now. Let's hope you never have to use hands-only CPR, but know that CPR combined with using an AED provides the best chance of saving a life. If possible, use an AED every time you provide CPR. Again, if you see a teen or adult suddenly collapse, don't be afraid to start hands-only CPR. Remember, call 911 and ask someone to get an AED, then push hard and fast in the center of the chest until the AED and help arrives. Your actions can help save a life. If you see a teen or adult suddenly collapse, it is important to act fast.
So there was a little screen over never stop after 10, and then it was covered up.
So with hands-only CPR, we do 200 compressions, and then we reevaluate the person.
Okay.
We check them for any sign of life, see if they're breathing, if they're responsive. If they're not, we go right back into compressions for another 200 compressions and check again. So it's about 2 minutes of compressions and then recheck, 2 minutes of compressions and a quick recheck for breathing or other signs of life. So yeah, there's with hands-only CPR, there's no need to deliver the rescue breaths or anything like that we did years ago. If we learned CPR years ago, what we've found is that the body retains enough oxygen for those first few minutes while responders, rescuers are coming to the scene, that just the compressions are enough to hopefully preserve vital organs, the heart, the lungs, the brain, that sort of thing. And then also with those chest compressions, you are getting some air exchange. You're compressing the chest enough to move the lungs to get some air exchange. I'm an OSHA guy, I'm a safety guy. So when we exhale, we're exhaling about 16% oxygen. And OSHA's cutoff for a low oxygen or oxygen deficient environment for safe work is 19.5% oxygen. So when we exhale or deliver those rescue breaths into a victim, we're already below OSHA's minimum threshold for safe oxygen. So really, you may be doing some good, but you're delivering deficient air, oxygen deficient air to that person already. What's most important are those compressions to keep that blood flowing that is retaining some oxygen in an adult or teenager sized body. I wouldn't hesitate to do compressions on the CPR on a child as well, if that was all I had available or all I had the means to do.
Sure.
But that first step is vital. Call 911 and get help on the way. Get folks of emergency medical services and the fire department on the way to help out.
So I've got a question about my phone. Is there an emergency? Sometimes it'll say your phone is only working for emergency calls. Is there a shortcut?
Sometimes with some providers, if you just press 9 and hold 9, that will connect you to 911.
Because like on mine, when I swipe before I even enter my code to unlock it, it says emergency call is.
Yeah, if you press that emergency call, that will unlock your phone to make an emergency call.
Will I still have to dial 911 then?
In most cases.
Okay,
yes. Yeah.
okay. Hello out there, we're back. Commissioner Sanders, we're back. All right. Unless there's anything else that a question anyone has, I think we're good, and I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Support.
Ms. Aaron, the roll, please.
Commissioner Rod Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Gloria Yamas.
Yes.
Commissioner Joanne McCollum.
Yes.
And Commissioner Bart Fuller.
Yes, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.